many have heard of the NJCCIC? How many are members of the NJCCIC? So after we got one, after this talk, we'll have all y'all sign up to be members of the NJCCIC. It's free. So the NJCCIC, New Jersey Cybersecurity Communications Integration Cell, was created in May of 2015 by executive order. And that executive order said that cybersecurity in the state of New Jersey is so important to the economy, to the health and welfare of its citizens, that we're going to create this agency that is responsible for protecting the citizens, the organizations, the businesses, academia, and all these others, and inform them of cyber threats, provide best practices, and the like. So it was created, as I said, May 2015. I was hired as the first director of the NJCCIC in June of 2016. It's comprised of the Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness in the state of New Jersey, New Jersey State Police, so troopers from the state police, the Office of Information Technology, so OIT. So those are the engineers that build enterprise systems and our security systems and the like. We're located at the Regional Operations Intelligence Center down in West Trenton, New Jersey. That's the campus of the New Jersey State Police. And that Regional Operations Intelligence Center, the ROC as we call it, is also the state's fusion center. So a fusion center, for those that don't know what those are where a whole bunch of different agencies come together at both the state, local, and federal government levels, and they work together to share information. And the primary purpose of a fusion center is to make sure that we're sharing information with one another so that we don't have another 9/11. So back in 2001, 2000, before that, agencies didn't share information with one another really well. That led to breakdowns in intelligence. That led to breakdowns that may have prevented, if the breakdowns didn't happen, may have prevented the World Trade Centers from coming down or an attack happening. So we're the cyber component of it. Not only do we have state police, Homeland Security, and OIT personnel, but we have FBI, we have DEA, we have DHS, Department of Homeland Security, we have the Secret Service, we have TSA, Transportation Security Administration, and others. So it's an amalgamation of just about every agency, and our job is to protect the state of New Jersey, gain intelligence, and make sure operations. That's our emergency operations center. So if a disaster were to strike the state of New Jersey, we all huddle up there. The governor, his cabinet huddles up there, and that's where we run that emergency from. So it's pretty neat, brand new organization. We're just growing into it, but we've got the cyber component of it. I'll talk to some of the things that we do with cyber. And specifically, I'm going to talk about intelligence-driven cybersecurity. So how we use intelligence and the concepts behind that, so that we can build a cybersecurity program. Cybersecurity is not necessarily about technology. That's a component of it. It's all three of those: people, processes, and technology. But it's really about data science and using big data. And you've heard the word, and you've heard artificial intelligence, and we'll step back into that. So as I said, we're the clearinghouse. We provide best practices. Every Thursday, we publish a bulletin electronically to our members. We have about 8,000 members, and that's what I was talking about, becoming members. Membership is free, so anybody can sign up. We've got 48 states and 23 countries that receive our bulletins, our alerts, our advisories, everything to do with cybersecurity and those types of things. So they go out whenever there's an alert or an advisory, but it's not everybody gets everything. So in the federal government, Department of Homeland Security, designated, and it depends what day of the week, let's say 18 critical infrastructure sectors. And those critical infrastructure sectors are considered functions that happen within America that are so important to national security, or so important to the functioning and the health and welfare of the United States, that they need to be protected. So if you think of transportation, communications, banking, healthcare, the utilities, energy, and those things, those are called critical infrastructure sectors. Each one of those sectors has unique threats against it. So telecommunications might have threats against that. Healthcare might have others. So what we do is provide those cyber threats or alerts regarding those critical infrastructure sectors, just to those. So we don't want to be sending things to the communications sector if it's not relevant to them, because there's so much misinformation and so much information that they'll just discard it and put it aside and not pay attention to it. So we want to make sure it's relevant. We want to make sure all the intelligence that we send out is actionable. If people are not acting on the information you provide them, that is just information, just noise. So, intelligence-driven cybersecurity. Anybody, do you guys study Laplace transforms here in high school? I know in college you will, with differential equations and stuff like that. So Pierre Laplace was a great mathematician back in the 1800s, French mathematician, physicist, and stuff. And you know, he surmised at one point and stated that if we knew information about the smallest things in the world, past and present, and the biggest things in the world, past and present, then we would have all the information that we would need to predict the future. We would know where everything was going to happen and stuff. And so when you think back about this, this is really, you know, the heart of AI, okay, and intelligence-driven systems, machine learning and the like, because the whole purpose of AI is really to predict what's going to happen next, whether it's a stock market, whether it's other things, is taking all sorts of information and doing that. So when we talk about intelligence, the more information that we can gather, the more relevant information we can gather, the better we can predict what's going to happen next, whether it's cybersecurity or anything else. So that, you know, everybody drives here, they follow Google Maps and stuff like that, Waze, and they give you all sorts of information about what's happening on the roadway, traffic accidents, congestion, and those types of things. So all that can reroute you, and that's the intelligent part of it. Same thing in cybersecurity. We want to grab as much information as possible and then be able to make that information into something that's actionable intelligence that we as defenders can act on, or you as the public or the critical infrastructure sectors can act on. So data science is relatively a new word, came up in the 1990s or so, but it's all those different things that I was talking about. Big data, artificial intelligence, machine learning, analysis, analytics, everything in that word cloud that you could think of. You know, it's just all that. And there are all sorts of components, and there are various levels of implementation in lots of different industries and the government. And we'll talk about how we're using it in the NJCCIC. So, the intelligence cycle. Real simply, if anybody's going into the Army, I know we've got one Army person here, but if you're going into an intelligence agency or any place else, or even just collecting information and doing homework, studying for tests and exams and stuff like that, you're going to walk through an intelligence cycle. You're going to do planning. What is the information that I need? Why do I need this? What is what I want to do with this information? The collection of the information is how you're going to collect it. You know, online, obviously, APIs, there's all sorts of data collection strategies that you can do and stuff like that. The processing of the information. And this is probably, if you're a data analyst, if you're going into a data science field in the future, this is where you're going to spend most of your time. Cleaning up bad data or ugly data and curating it so that you can actually use it. There's a lot of natural data that, you know, if you think of police reports, police officers may be the greatest spellers, but then they may be the worst spellers. They may be the best, you know, writers, and then they may not know grammar. And so how they describe things may be difficult for an analyst to put together, but they tag them and they bake that into something that, you know, they can use and stuff. So the production is when you actually produce an intelligence report, something that's written, some information that you give to somebody so that they can do something with. And then dissemination, like I said, giving to somebody. So actionable intelligence is really what I talk about, what I really focus on. We have intelligence analysts down at the NJCCIC, so we have an entire cyber threat intelligence and analysis team. And their job is to curate all that data, collect it all, and to provide that actionable intelligence. So that cycle, again, the data, the information, the analysis, making it into intelligence, and when we disseminate it, making it so it's actionable, so whoever receives it can do something with that. So for instance, we'll talk about some of the ways that we use this intelligence in the following slides. So this is a common problem in cybersecurity. If you work for a big company, you have all sorts of workers that not only work within your company network, but you have traveling people, okay? And you have remote workers. And typically they VPN in, or virtual private network, to connect into the internal network. And so one of the impossible traveler problems that we've always had in cybersecurity is identifying when the same person or the same credentials are logging in from two different places that are so far apart that they couldn't be there at the same time. So let's say logging in from New York while also logging in from Los Angeles within an hour or 2 or 3 hours. There's no plane or anything that's going to get you there in that time. So you can't be in two places at once. That's known. So if somebody is logging in two places at once, they've either shared their credentials with somebody, which is against policy, or their credentials have been compromised. And credential compromise is the keys to the kingdom of any organization. So we want to find out if people have had their credentials compromised. So this is what a VPN log would look like. You would see the date, the time that a VPN connection was made. You'd see the username. You'd see how long the duration was in hours. Then you see the IP addresses. And every computer on the public internet has a unique IP address, if you will. And so what we would do is look at those IP addresses and try and figure out where people are from. But with just this amount of information, we can't do anything with it. Next. So what we do is we can start geolocating where those IP addresses may be. So geolocation, it's real simple. You can use tools like traceroute. I don't know if anybody's using those things. Tools at the command line to find out geographically approximately where they may be. And you're never going to get to a pinpoint location like on a Google map, but we're going to get to a city, to a region, to a country, and those are good enough for the time being. So we can take this information, we can see they're logging in from what country. We got USA, Puerto Rico, Canada up here, what region, the region being the state, latitude, longitude, what provider they're coming in from, what their ISP might be and stuff. So this information, we're taking raw data, adding some more information to it or data to it to make information out of it. We can actually start seeing things. Most people are coming in from the United States, but then we can keep going. All right, so what I like to do, and how many math people are in here? Okay, it's said that math people like to visualize everything. So I like to visualize everything. I don't like rows and columns and databases. But what I do here is I can take this information, you can plot it on a map, and you can do it with all sorts of tools that are out there, the coordinates that you have in GIS. So what we can see is that we've got all these countries that we've got logins from. This is a US company that also has offices in Canada. So those Canadian and US logins are going to be what we should expect. That's the normal. But we also see some logins from some other countries that are not normal to us. So do you know what those countries are over in the right-hand side? Any geography? Okay. And then what's the red one? The Ukraine. That's pretty good. I don't have any prizes, but the Ukraine is good. Okay, so the Ukraine, I know from my experience that we see a lot of attacks from the Ukraine. There are hacking groups over there. There's no laws over there regarding hacking. So we've got all sorts of groups for hire over there that will hack into different sites. So that one jumps off the map at me. China, the Ukraine. Why are people logging into our company from those different places? Keep going. So as we do this, we can take that data, and we've got one user ID, okay, one person who's logging in from 3 different places at the same time. Those places being in Costa Rica, the Ukraine, and the United States, and that logging happens to be Houston, Texas, and stuff like that. So obviously that person can't be in Houston, Texas. That allows the analysis to draw a conclusion that this username and password has been compromised, And now we can disconnect that account from the network, and we can start looking back to see what they do. So simple things, just taking different data sets, putting them together, visualizing them to be able to draw that analysis, and then the action that comes afterwards. So this is pretty trivial, but this is a problem with every company, the impossible traveler problem, and why security tools don't have this built into them. There's a product that you guys can build. The next slide is this is a month in the NJCCIC. So we have intrusion next-gen firewalls that sit at the perimeter of our network that log all the attacks against our network, okay? And these are going to be moderate, high, and critical attacks. So critical being that if they were successful, they would gain access to the network and do anything that we want. The Garden State Network, for those that don't know what that is the network that the entire state government runs on. So if you think the Department of Treasury, Labor, Department of Transportation, the state police, Homeland Security, the court system, the Turnpike Authority, New Jersey Transit, and every municipality here. So how many have driver's license? How many got a ticket? Nobody's got a ticket yet? Okay, so you got a ticket. So when you get a ticket, the police officer is going to take your license, go back to his car, and he's going to put your license number into the computer. That computer makes a connection to the Garden State Network and looks up to see whether your driver's license is suspended. So every police agency and every municipality and just about every school system does connect into the Garden State Network. Our job at the NJCCIC is to defend the Garden State Network. So these are the attacks that we see. And you can see that there's 6 million coming from Russia in the last month. Most of them are coming from within the United States. These are the IP addresses where those attacks are coming from. And we can see all that. Most of those attacks coming from Russia, they're really Bitcoin mining attacks against IP addresses, looking to see if there's a router that has a generic vulnerability that they can gain access to, so that they can gain access to your home computers, install malware or unwanted software that they can use your processing power to mine Bitcoin. That's really what that is. And it's indiscriminate. They do every IP address in the world looking for those vulnerabilities so that they can do this. So this is a great picture, especially when I show it to my boss and I say I need more people or I need more budget. We're being attacked by the Russians 6 million times in a month, or the Chinese, or whoever it may be, that we're being attacked, and we need to do more and more with it. But it doesn't really tell me anything. We can't do anything with it. It's not intelligence. It's just information about what this is, and we got to dig into it. So we can dig into the intelligence side of this. And so if we start looking at Russia, and we just say what are the critical ones as far as severity is concerned, and how they're trying to get in, then I can take that information and start digging into more and more of that stuff. So one of the things that we use all sorts of tools in the NJCCIC. All of this stuff comes into an elastic stack, ELK stack. Anybody familiar with ELK? Okay, you guys laugh, so you use it? Okay. Just about every security agency is using ELK now for cybersecurity. Because you can take all sorts of data, parse it, bring it in, and do all sorts of correlation. And then we take this, we visualize it, either it's in Cabana or we use something called Tableau. Tableau is a business intelligence tool, allows you to do data visualizations and stuff like that. And now what I can have is everybody that has access to this can now interact with the data rather than just being a screenshot in a PowerPoint. Now we can start looking at all the different countries or any individual country and start investigating those types of things. So having the data, having a way to interact with it, and then having to do something with it is really what we're trying to get through here. So, visualizing data. In the last year, we've had just about 25 police departments in the state of New Jersey get hacked. And when I say get hacked, is they've had ransomware installed on their computer systems, encrypting all their data. And that ransomware was installed on their computer-aided dispatch systems and records management systems. They call it CAD RMS. So these are the systems where if a 911 call comes in, they dispatch cars to those different locations. So, you know, maybe a robbery in progress or something like that. So the CAD RMS system allows those mobile data terminals within the cars to connect in to headquarters. And so what happens, a lot of these municipalities and a lot of these police departments install this stuff, and they install it on Windows computers. Windows has something called Remote Desktop Protocol, which allows you to remotely log in to another system over the network. And obviously, there's no protection on it, just a Windows username and password with no password failure for how many times, or lockout for how many times you fail the password and stuff like that. So what happens is, people scan all sorts of IP addresses up and down the state of New Jersey and all over the world looking for systems that have RDP exposed to the public internet. So these ransomware things became really important to us because we had police departments where 2 years worth of data had been encrypted. They got into the network and spread out, and they you know. So we said, what does the threat look like, or what, you know, what does the vulnerability of the state of New Jersey look like? And we started to scan all the IP addresses in the state to find out how many had RDP exposed to the public internet. And we broke it down by zip code. And you can see in just about every zip code, and we're up here in Bergen County, there's thousands of systems that are available, okay? And so in the computer security world, it's kind of like how many have gone camping and seen a bear? Okay. So you don't have to be faster than the bear when you're in the woods. You just have to be faster than the slowest person in your group, okay? And so it's the same thing in cybersecurity. You don't have to be faster than the adversary or better than the adversary. You just got to be a little bit more secure than your neighbors, okay? These people are akin to driving up to a shopping center, parking the car, leaving the keys in the ignition, running with the doors open. They're asking to be hacked. They're that easy to be hacked and stuff like that. So one of our jobs in the state, in the NJCCIC, is to try and identify who these systems belong to and then notify them and teach them the proper ways to connect remote connections using VPN or those types of things. And you can see all sorts of different, you could actually log in to Rutgers University into the elevators and look in the cameras to see what, you know, the cameras in the elevators see and stuff like that. Just by logging into our RDP systems. They're wide open. And there's a whole bunch of others that are out there. So, okay. One of the other things that we looked at about 2 years ago, it's almost 2 years ago this month, or I think it's next month, the WannaCry ransomware outbreak. And this is something that started overseas. That was hidden over in England and Europe and Asia and stuff like that. And it was eventually spreading to the state, you know, to the United States, obviously. So this was happening late Thursday, Friday, and we wanted to see what the exposure for systems in New Jersey were. So again, we wanted to look for Windows systems that had SMB, Server Messaging Block version 1, exposed to the public internet, that they didn't patch using a Microsoft patch that they put out a long time before. And again, we can see all sorts of systems that are available there. That same weekend, we were working with NYPD because they wanted to map out what it looked like for New York as well. So we use a lot of open source tools and a lot of tools that are out there. I don't know if anybody has ever heard of Shodan. Shodan.io is a website. It'll show you, it's the Google of the Internet of Things, as they call it. You can find all the different systems and what's out there. And this is something we pull in this data and enrich it so that we can put it on a map like this. So again, intelligence, these are the systems that are available for, you know, that WannaCry could impact and could have big impacts on them. And you know, what we could do with them. Next one. All right, so temporal analysis is something else that we do. I talked about ransomware with WannaCry. I talked about ransomware with the police departments. Over the last couple of years, ransomware has been probably the biggest nuisance and threat for companies in the United States, and especially in New Jersey. But over the past 8 months or so, ransomware has gone down a little bit, and something called Emotet, which is a banking Trojan, is actually picking up. And it's Emotet was created in 2014. It was called a banking Trojan. So when I say banking Trojan, You would download it, would get installed on your system, it would wait for you to log in to an account, like your bank account, or an Amazon account, or a Facebook account, or whatever, and it would steal your credentials. And that's really what it did. And the banking Trojan, obviously, is so that it can get your credentials to your bank and then empty out your bank account and all the money that's in it. So that was the original purpose of it. But since then, it's morphed, it's evolved into a lot of different things, and it's been really, really bad. Allentown, the city of Allentown, which is just on the other side of the border here in Pennsylvania, they got hit with Emotet a few months ago, and it cost them $1 million just to recover from it. So Emotet not only does the banking Trojan, and we just had a government organization here in New Jersey get hit with it, all their accounts for Staples online, for Amazon online, for every place they did business online, their passwords were compromised. But then it also moved laterally across the network and installed ransomware and other things across their network into their ICS systems. Anybody know what an ICS system is?
Industrial control system.
And so what does an industrial control system do?
Monitors things like your power plants, your dams, so that you can automate processes.
So yeah, it's going to monitor and for, things like heating and ventilation systems. It's going to monitor anything that's industrial, basically. So how much chlorine goes into the water, that may be done via an ICS system. So it can spread into computers there as well. Lots of things with Emotet. Not only does it do that, but then it starts to download another thing called an Outlook scraper, which is going to take all your contacts in email and then start sending emails purportedly from you or them to people they know. So phishing emails, if you will, or emails, spoof emails as they are. People are more likely to open an email from somebody that they know, or it looks like it came from their account, than somebody that they don't know. So they use those trusted relationships to keep spreading that, not only within the domain, but across different organizations. All right, so beyond pictures and numbers, in those emails that we see, there's all sorts of URLs, Dropbox being one. You click on this, and you can download a virus, if you will. So one of the things that we want to do is we want to take all this information. State of New Jersey, we have 67,000 employees. On a daily basis, we have 4 million inbound emails coming in, a daily basis, 4 million, 67,000, you can do the math. We block 85% of them because of malware or phishing and those types of things. But what we want to take from them is this information, where it's coming from, the originating IP addresses, the URLs that are being used. That's the threat intelligence that we want to share, because that's the threat intelligence that other people can use to protect their systems as well. So not just IP addresses, hash values, and URLs or domains and stuff like that, but the tactics. This came in via phishing email. This is what we'll see and how people are doing it. The TTPs, as they say. Okay, next up. All right, out of cybersecurity and back into algorithms and big data and machine learning and all of that. Prior to me taking this position in the NJCCIC, I was the CIO at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And that's down in the Washington, D.C. area. And at NCMEC, we were the nation's clearinghouse for all child exploitation and missing children cases. So every company in the world, from Facebook to Google, every company in the United States, I should say, Facebook, Google, Twitter, WhatsApp, you name it, Instagram, which is part of Facebook, obviously, but they have to report to us anytime there's child exploitation material on their networks, child victim identification team. Their job is to look at these images and identify who the child is, where it may have happened, when it happened, or who the offender is. And we're going to take that information, we provide reports back to law enforcement, so obviously they can save the child from the situation they're in, and also arrest the offender. And so one of the things, when we initially built this many, many years ago, we were using one-way hashing algorithms, MD5 and SHA-1, to identify exact matches of files. So if we had the exact same file come in, we could do an MD5 hash and we could say this windmill.jpg in this case is the same as windmill.jpg in this case. So the MD5 hash obviously is here. However, if we were to change the image from a JPEG to a GIF file, what happens is we've changed the file, okay, and now we've changed the MD5. So very brittle, not allowing us to find it, to be able to say, even though these are visually identical, they're not the same files. And so the methodology that we used wasn't really working. The algorithms that we used weren't meeting our needs. So one of the neat things about NCMEC is it's a nonprofit agency, organization. And we get to work with all the best technology companies in the world. So I used to run the Tech Coalition, and this is Facebook and Google and Yahoo and all those engineers, Palantir and the like, and came together, Microsoft as well, and we said, this is our problem. We're getting 1 million images in a week. We've only got 16 analysts that can go through these things. It's taking us 12 weeks to provide a report to police departments. How can we do this better? So there was one professor up at Dartmouth University, Dr. Hani Farid, and he said, I think he had an answer for us. And robust hashing is really what it is. So what he did is he and Microsoft Research funded the research on this and funded the program. He came up with something called PhotoDNA. And basically PhotoDNA takes a fuzzy hash of an image and allows us to use that to compare against other hashes. And it uses math to do that, okay? You click in geometry. First thing it does is it takes this image, whatever size, and it reduces it down to something at 26 by 26 pixels, okay? Then what it does, it changes it to grayscale, gets rid of all the color. Next thing it does, it breaks it up into a 6 by 6 grid, it runs histograms, and then comes up with a signature that you see here, which is 144 unsigned chars, or integers from 0 to 255, if you will. So this is the signature that we got, a little bit different than what we're using in the MD5 for the windmill. So the way that we do this is, in order to find out what the distance is between those two images, we take the Euclidean distance between those two signatures. How many of you guys do Euclidean geometry in here? I know that. So you may be able to do this in your head. But basically, we're taking the square root of P1 minus P2 squared plus P2 minus P2 and so on and so forth for all 144 in each one of those, okay? And what we get is a number at the end here at 107. So through the research that Dr. Farid did, he found out that if the number was less than 41,943, then it was going to be a visually similar image, okay? So we can say that those two images are alike. It saves our analysts lots and lots of time. Next slide. So what we can see here, this is the bear in the woods problem. This is the Grand Teton National Park. Anybody been there? Greatest place in the world, if you get a place. So this is a family vacation. My wife and I, I'm probably 500 yards away, but she's taking the pictures, and you can see the mother bear and her cubs, right? In the left-hand side, we've got image 1191. The mother bear is with the cub, and then the other one, they're a little bit away, but they're visually similar. Any human can tell you that. However, if we used MD5, obviously the hash values would be completely different. So what we do is we use PhotoDNA, we run this through, and we find out the Euclidean distance is 31,000 or so, which is under that 41,000. So now we've got something that is visually similar, and we're able to make that determination. Now the analysts down at NCMEC use this 1 million times a week, okay, to do their analysis. That's how many images of child pornography are coming in. That's the scale of the problem in the United States. So 1 million times, they're able to turn around a case in hours instead of 8 to 12 weeks anymore. So this is the use of algorithms to do this. However, algorithms do have limits, right? And what we'll talk about in the next couple slides is where those limits come in. All right, so PhotoDNA boundaries, boundary cases as I call them. You can see that you've got the rosebud, right? It's unbloomed, and you've got the rose fully bloomed. And the distance is 602,000 or so, which is way larger than 41,000, that variance tolerance that we say for visually similar images. However, if I do a time lapse of the rose bud blooming into the full flower, you're going to see where this breaks down. And we've got to be really careful as we group sets of images based on those Euclidean distances. Next slide. So, up the top we've got our original, and then over time we can see that the first and the second are visually similar, right? PhotoDNA tells us that, 30,744. The second and third, it's 40,000. The third and fourth, it's 37,000, and so on and so forth. And you can see the distances between them. And then when we get down here, 39,000, they're all under that 41,000 threshold that we call it. So the subsequent ones are visually similar to the one before it. However, if we were to group them all together, obviously the one down here is totally not visually similar to the one up top. So you got to be careful with your grouping and how you're using algorithms and the resultant things that are coming out of it. Because if you start doing this, then everybody in here is going to look like the same person eventually, right? That's bad algorithms. That's bad, computer programming and stuff like that. But these are the boundary cases that when you're building systems, whether it's machine learning or artificial intelligence, you got to understand the boundaries of the algorithms, what they're trying to do, what the questions you're trying to answer. Next one. All right, so because Microsoft funded this, Google wasn't to be outdone. Google engineers came into NCMEC, and we were talking about a case that we had, and one of our analysts had this case, and it was of a little girl who was being raped, and the little girl was being raped on a bed, and the bedspread had a unique pattern on it, right? A month later, that same analyst got a different case, and it was a different little girl being raped, same bedspread. So how do we find, PhotoDNA wouldn't do this, how do we find unique things in an image? So what Google did is they built something for us using visual search, okay? And a lot of this stuff is in the research labs behind what you see in the Google image search and stuff like that. So basically, I can take anything on the wall in the background and be able to highlight that or rubber band it, and then ask visual search to go through all the images and find any other images that have that let's go caps. So what we can do is we highlight that, we say use as query, the next one, and what we can see is all those images have those let's go caps. Doesn't matter if it's right side up, black and white color, upside down. Doesn't matter if it's somebody else's cubicle completely, because you can see in this one, it's a different analyst, different cubicle, different signs, but basically the same. So these types of things help us identify where something happened. What we'll do is zoom in on shopping bags that may have zip codes in them or phone numbers for the store, because not all stores that we have here in New Jersey are all over the world. There's different supermarkets out west or down south and like. We may look at the different outlets that are electrical outlets. They're different overseas. They're different in South America and Asia and places like that. So we use this all the time to be able to solve good problems. So these algorithms that you build, not only can you do like things like Candy Crush and stupid games, but you can actually build them to do good things, to help protect kids and stuff like that. And that's where that tech coalition comes in. Next one. So we were talking about big data, talking about intelligence-driven security and all the other stuff. Practical considerations, obviously, we've got to think about what questions we're trying to answer. We just don't do things to do things, but there's got to be a purpose, and that's the practicality of it. It's not science necessarily. It's more like an engineering problem that we have within government, that we have in nonprofits, that we have in companies. So the ability of our analysts, the ability of us to build things. How long did it take you to build your own stack?
About like a few weeks.
A few weeks. So do we have the ability to do that? If we want to use something like that, we would first have to have the ability. Okay, the relevance of the data that we're bringing in. We talk about the impossible traveler, VPN logs, firewall logs, web application logs, system logs, and those types of things, the relevance that we have there, putting that all in there. The accuracy of it, okay? Now, one of the biggest things in cybersecurity is making sure the time code is correct. Because if you have a network with lots of systems that are using different times, okay, where it says it's 5 o'clock here and it's 4:45 over there, you're going to have an impossible investigation to do. So making sure you have a time source, and you can do that simply by going to the atomic clocks and stuff like that. The scale of it, how big you're scaling out, we do terabytes per week, not per week, per year that we do. It's like 40 terabytes of data, but that's small. Not most systems can do it, Elk can do a lot more. Rabbit holes, going down and trying to find something and never getting out of it and finding out you're a dead end. And you spend a lot of time and resources doing that. Eye candy, not just building charts and visualizations to make them look good, but actually they tell a story. And that's the whole purpose behind those visualizations, is that they tell that story. And the return on investment. All of this costs money, it costs time, it costs effort. So there's got to be that return on investment that provides value to the company or the government or to whatever organization is using it. And then some of the tools and technologies that we use, there's all sorts of them out there. Scripting tools. I'm a little older than you guys. We didn't have Python, we didn't have a lot of programming languages that you had, but we did have Unix. And so I used the bash shell, okay, and I use things like sed and awk, and I think you guys had Ryan Kerrigan come in here at one point. That's awk, AWK, Kerrigan is what that stands for. So he wrote that programming language many years ago at Bell Labs. You had a question?
Excuse me. Did you guys use 6502?
6502, I don't know what that is. What is it?
It's like
Oh, assembly language.
Yeah.
Way back when, yes, we had to use assembly language. The first class that I took was Fortran 77. And I had to write a program for my first assignment. And it had 23 lines of code, 21 of which had syntax errors. Okay. So that told me I wasn't a programmer.
You have to write it on paper.
We had to write it on paper. But we also had to run it through a VAX VMS 1170 and stuff. So, question?
When you're making these AI algorithms, what are some difficulties or like matters that you have to take into consideration in terms of privacy when you're working with large data sets or like data that you're collecting from the public?
No, that's a great question. The privacy issue is something that is going to come more and more into focus because we're collecting more and more information on people and things of that nature. So that is something that a lot of organizations, and I say organizations to keep government and companies and academia together, that don't take into consideration. So privacy wasn't something that Facebook thought about a long time ago. Privacy wasn't something that Google thought about. They thought about monetizing that information in order to make money using your information and stuff like that. But the government has big restrictions on what it can do with that data. And then not only private data, but also taking inaccurate data and then making privacy claims about somebody.
So then when you're working with bigger companies, like those rules that apply to them as well, whatever they're creating?
Yeah, so, and that's another good question. So there's something called GDPR. I don't know if anybody's heard about that. General Data Privacy Regulation. So you guys probably heard about this and stuff. And that was just launched by Europe not too long ago. Lots of restrictions on what an organization can do with with data from people. That does apply to United States organizations. It applies to Microsoft, Google, Facebook. Facebook moved all their data centers that have privacy information about European citizens out of Europe so that they didn't have that problem. So they thought they didn't have that problem. But that's going to be something that they're hit with. They're already being investigated. So.
The organization uses social media as a data collection source?
Absolutely. So the question is, do we use social media as a data collection source? Anushka's been down to the NJCCIC, and you'll see one of our big screens. We've got TweetDeck that sits there, and we monitor all sorts of Twitter handles and stuff like that for information. It's not, it may be, Brian Krebs, who is a cybersecurity, it may be about New Jersey government, it may be about the governor, so that we have the situational awareness of what's happening in the world.
Do you have to buy that information?
No, so TweetDeck is actually free, okay? And it's just saying what ones you want to put on your TweetDeck and show. So. Yeah, so in fact, when WannaCry came up, we actually found that on Twitter before it started hitting the United States. So we're looking around the world to see what's happening out there with malware and stuff and infections. Same thing with Petya, no Petya. It was hitting Ukraine before it was hitting us. And people were tweeting about it there, which alerted us and said, okay, do we have these vulnerabilities on our systems?
And then in situations such as that one, do you make people aware that you're sort of looking at things or is there a disclaimer?
Is there a disclaimer that we're looking at? No, we only look at public information. So we have the right to look at public information. We don't store it, we're only looking at it contemporaneously. Is there another question? No? Okay. So some of the tools, scripting tools, as I said, ELK, R. You guys get taught R, or is that done here? Statistics and stuff like that, use that. So Tableau, I mentioned. Nuix is a forensics tool that we use. Splunk is another security information event management system. Palantir, we talked about that, and we use that all the time as well to do all sorts of analysis. And there are hundreds of other tools out there, so it's not just those. The top ones that I have up there, those are all open source. They don't cost anything. When we get down into the Tableau, Nuix, Splunk area, that's commercial products that do cost things. So as we move forward, okay, we hear governments wanting to build smart cities. We hear, everybody in here has a smartphone. You probably have a smart TV. There's no TVs that are sold anymore that aren't smart. Probably have smart thermostats, smart doorbells, and smart locks and things like that. We're coming up on the autonomous vehicles. We have intelligent traffic systems out there, even though you're stuck in traffic all the time. ITS, intelligent traffic systems, are supposed to move traffic seamlessly, so we're not stuck. All those things are connected. This Internet of Things, and we talk about ICS devices and everything like that. This is the part that scares me, because we're not able to protect data that we have today on people. What makes us think we're going to protect things like this that will have more impact, not just on privacy, but on the health and safety of the citizens of New Jersey and beyond and stuff like that. So this is where that big data comes in. This is where that intelligence, being able to take all sorts of data and process it to find out when there's things that are going wrong, whether it's a smart building or other things. You just heard the sirens go by, and I don't know if it was the fire trucks or whatnot. But we have all these first responders, such as firemen, police officers, hazmat crews, and the like. 5 years from now, we're going to have cyber first responders that are going to be going to scenes like smart cities to try and reboot the city and get it up and running. So it'll be interesting. The problems that you guys will face after I'm long gone are going to be completely different than the things that we've seen going through this. Questions?
How are you going to deal with implementing these smart cities for people that maybe don't understand technology as well or need to become acquainted? So we may understand how the smartphones and everything works, but how are you going to make sure that everybody is comfortable with being able to get into these things?
So like my mother, that can't even use an iPad and those types of things. So yeah, this is a big issue. This is not just going to happen overnight. This is going to happen over time. And smart cities are going to evolve, and you'll have autonomous vehicles at some point as well. but I have a 2007 Toyota Tacoma. There's nothing smart about it, and that's going to stay that way. And so we've got to blend those systems together. This is something that governments are struggling with. Every mayor and governor and all these different politicians, that they want smart cities because the conveniences for all the citizens, they want it because of ratables, tax rates and stuff like that. But the problems are cybersecurity and other things, that what happens when the smart city goes down. Everybody's used a Windows computer or Mac computer, probably has blue screen of death, or their Mac lock up on them and stuff like that. So technology flaws do exist. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Like, if there were smart cities, like, it would be possible.
So if they were smart cities, would it be possible for them to get hacked? Yes. Okay, so if you think of, and you guys are young, there was a breach Target a bunch of years ago. They got hacked. The way that they got hacked is somebody has to authenticate to the systems internally, right? And they do that over VPN. However, when the vendor who controlled the heating and air conditioning system was able to VPN in so that they can monitor and run the air conditioning to make sure the temperature in the stores is correct. Well, the bad actors went into the vendor's system, got his password, logged in, and then was able to hack into the point of sale systems in Target and steal all that information on credit cards. So the same way that people that will manage the smart cities, okay, the lighting and the street lights and and all the traffic signals, is the same way that we connect into computers today. And all those vulnerabilities on computers today will also be in those smart cities and the computers that control them. So that's where you guys are going to have to develop unhackable systems and systems that can be patched and those types of things.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Do you think the purview of NJK will ever grow to looking specifically for targeted attacks, or do you think you're going to continue, and I think that's a job for federal government, do you think it's going to stay at ransomware and the thing that we see most?
So the question, do we think the purview of the NJCCIC will expand to look at targeted attacks? And when we say targeted attacks, a lot of the stuff I talk about is indiscriminate. This is just groups out there looking for an opportunity. Targeted attacks may be terrorist organizations, nation states that are actually targeting systems for whatever reason, that may be terrorism or military reasons and the like. We kind of do that. So the NJCCIC, we work with Homeland Security, we work with all these agencies. My boss is former CIA, and so we've got some of that intelligence purview to us, if you will. But we're more focused on unclassified areas and those types of things. So we do it, but in that fusion center mentality, so that information is shared. And right now, so we've got, it'll be October in another day or so. November 7th is the next election, and everybody's been hearing about Russians hacking election systems. So that is a big project that we have going on now, making sure that they don't hack our systems. And we're working with everybody from the NSA to DHS to the FBI and everybody else, making sure that our systems aren't targeted by those groups overseas that want to interfere with election systems.
We have time for one more question.
Okay.
Are the data sets that you presented today publicly available?
No, the data sets on our internal network are not publicly available. But I'll give you a neat data set if you want to play around with Cabana and Elk and stuff like that. The New York City Taxi and Limousine Commission. All the fares for New York City taxis from, I think it's 2013. So every time somebody took a taxi, it's going to have the date, time, the location, and then the date, time where they dropped the person off. So you can get all that information, do all sorts of great analysis on it. So that would be a great data set. There's a lot of open data sets. If you go to data.open.nj.gov or something like that, there's a lot of free data sets that are out there, but not so much on the cybersecurity side. Okay. Hey, I want to thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. I didn't know about Bergen Academies last year. Okay, and only learned about them because we sponsored something called Girls Go Cyberstar, which the teams from Bergen Academy did so well in. And so that was my introduction here. You guys are doing a great job. Lots of real talent here. Use that talent for good things going forward. Thanks again.